Good morning, I'm Joel with North Country Vans. Welcome back to another build video. This is day 2 of our big push to get the van usable for next week. And we are starting to get prepped to put these panels together for the rear bed platform. And I wanted to bring something up for you. So let's see here. I have a scrap piece of plywood. And I want to point out, if you look at these layers of the plywood, your face layer is extremely thin. So if you guys are building with this stuff and you're going to make openings into it for cubbies and things like that, it's a good idea to round off the edge of that opening there. And I did it with a little 1/8 inch round over bit because this laminate, because it's so thin, can chip really easy. So if I drag my fingernail, there you go. You can see how that laminate or that face veneer will chip right off. If you round it over, it'll prevent it from doing that. So you can do it with a router bit. Otherwise, you can take just a piece of sandpaper and knock that edge down, and that'll serve you well. So I'm going to round over the opening in our panel here. Got a little bit of sanding, then we got to start putting on some blocks in here, so that way we can assemble it and have the drawer bottoms, or sorry, the cubby bottoms sit on something solid. And then we'll start Kreg screwing together, use a biscuit joiner, all the fun stuff, and I'll take you along for the process. All right, so let's talk about what a biscuit joint is. A biscuit joint, I got one I built real quick for you, is basically a little groove in the wood, and then you put a biscuit in, which is a piece of wood. You glue it in there, and then on the matching side it has another groove and it sits in there, and that way we can keep it lined up and it gives it some rigidity, something for the glue to bite into. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use pocket screws. Pocket screws are really popular. All the home improvement stores, you'll find a brand called Kreg, and they made pocket screws pretty famous. You get a jig for it, but basically what it does is it drills in a screw so you can join boards together like that. And they have all sorts of jigs. You can get them really expensive to do big long sheets of plywood with. You can get one specifically for cabinet making, or you can get a pocket jig. And this is the cheapest, and I like them. They work really well. You got to clamp them down on your workpiece to get them to work good. And it comes with a special bit. And it looks like so. You can see how it has that step to it. And basically, you have your block clamped into your workpiece. That bit goes in, and then it gives you that angle to get in that wood to create your pocket screw. So we have the biscuit joints already cut into our main panel, along with our little block for that shelf. And then I've got the spots marked out that I got to drill my pocket screws. So we're going to get that done, and then we'll attach the first 2 panels together. So exciting. Oh, last thing, I should probably mention this. To cut that groove for the biscuit, we use a biscuit cutter. And so basically what it does is, as you push it out, the saw blade extends. Pretty simple, and it's adjustable, so you can do all sorts of angles with it, different thicknesses of wood, etc. So while we're making good progress, so what I'm doing here is, this is the far side of that box essentially that I'm building, and for the back of that cabinet that's going to fit up against the van, we're going to put 1/4 inch plywood on that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to router a rabbet into this so that 1/4 inch ply will sit in there, 1/2 inch down and then a 1/4 inch to fit it in so it sits flush to the back side of this. And then that back panel will come across, and that'll serve as the back of our little storage cubby underneath there. And just a note for you guys, when you're cutting the veneer of this plywood with a router bit like this, we're going to be cutting down into it. It has a tendency to try to chip off that veneer. So what I'll do is I'll make a nice shallow pass slow, and that will cut that veneer clean, and then I can get down and do the meat of the cut. So we got the one side already attached here, and we're working on this side. So I will show you how I put those biscuit joints in. All I do, take one of your biscuits, just a little glue around the one edge on the back side. I use a little acid brush, and I coat 1/2 of that biscuit on both sides. And you just stick them in there. And we'll do that all the way up. And then we'll glue up the other panel and make sure we put glue in the grooves of the matching panel. And then clamp it all together and Kreg screw it. All right, so I got a little bit too much glue in these dados, or sorry, these biscuit joints, and it's not a terrible thing. It's just going to make a mess. So you want to make sure you coat both sides of that good, but anything additional is just going to get squeegeed out, and you're going to be wiping it off the surface. So it's not a bad idea. Just have a little scrap piece of rag that you can wipe off any excess glue on, and your fingers, so you don't get that glue all over your nice Formica panel. All right, so as I clamp that together, you can see there's some glue that's squeegeed out, and you just take a damp rag. You can wipe that right off. The last thing we got to do is we got to put our pocket screws in, and again we're using Kreg brand, and get the right screws when you're doing this. It's just going to make it that much easier. But one thing is this joint here will really shift on you because you're trying to screw it in at an angle. So you have to make sure this is all good and clamped up solid whenever you're dealing with this stuff. Just a note to remember. And then you could use a drill or an impact gun to get these in, but they're pretty delicate as far as when you're screwing in between the layers of laminate of the plywood. So I prefer to use just a regular screwdriver and take it nice and slow. And it looks a lot easier than what it actually is, because before we glued these panels up, I went through and already ran all the screws in while it was clamped, so I didn't have to mess around with the glue and screwing and everything all simultaneously. So this should go pretty easy. All right, so I think that is looking pretty dang sharp. So on this van, my idea is, like I said, I want to contrast the light and the dark. And one of the things I really want to accent is the laminated edges of the plywood. So all of these styrations that you can see in all of my cuts, and even on the edge here of our box, I'm leaving all of this exposed. If you didn't really like that look, you could go through and you could just extend this Formica to cover all these edges. That's typically how they do them on countertops. Or you can do edge banding. So edge banding, they have tools that do it. It kind of routers in a little lip, and then you get like a rubber molding and you can stuff it down in there. That's pretty popular. They use that a lot when they're dealing with MDF or medium density fiberboard instead of plywood. You can also do little wood strips. So if you rip wood like an 1/8 or a 1/4 inch thick on the table saw, you can cover up this, glue it, and then just put a couple pin nails in it, and that'll hold it. They even have adhesive edge banding that you just kind of glue it down, and you can apply it with an iron and it'll adhere to it. But again, in this design, I want to really accent all of these. I think plywood is kind of a cool product that we can take otherwise a lot of wood that would be deemed not desirable, and we can turn it into usable product. It's more of an industrial process, and again, I'm building a van, so I'm not building fine furniture here, and in a van I kind of want it to look more industrial. So that's my thoughts anyway. So we're gonna let this dry up for a minute. We still got to cut the back side of that panel, and then we'll be ready to screw it in the van. So I will check in a little while.